Okay, thank you for coming. My name is on the program tonight, so I thought I'd better say a couple of words, but I'm actually going to step aside and leave it to Brian, who actually did virtually all of the work in getting TryAPL to come up. But I'm really happy to have this session today, because I think actually TryAPL is one of the most exciting things we've done this year. Maybe most of you haven't been using it, but it's really something that's helping us now to expose APL to some new people. And Brian sent me a storyline of how he wanted to tell the story, and I thought I didn't have anything to add, so.
Well, I've completely changed it now, so.
So, Brian and the story of TryAPL.
Hi, thanks for coming tonight. So, how did TryAPL start? Well, blame Joel. If you were at last year's Dyalog conference in Boston, Joel Huff was the winner of last year's APL programming contest. And so he decided to share some insight. And so I've taken some excerpts from his talk, and hopefully we'll be able to hear this.
Talking to all of you wonderful people, one of the questions I get consistently asked is, how can we get APL to be more popular with students? How can we get it in there? How can we get people excited about it? So I thought about that. And I usually have a set of steps I go through, the phases of me learning a language. First, I try it online. Have you guys seen that? I don't know how much of you go browsing for, Python and Ruby stuff. Let me see if I can switch monitors here without causing too much havoc. There we go. You remember that. Try Haskell. There we go. So this is a website, tryhaskell.org. It's usually how it goes, trywhateverlanguage.org. You can type Haskell code in there, hit enter, and it will evaluate it and give you the result. Absolutely zero barrier to entry for trying Haskell. And this isn't a unique thing. I've got a list. Here's Scheme. Here's Ruby. Even C is getting in on the action. This is LLVM and Clang. You can type C code in there and get assembly language out, so you can check out their compiler. So also Python. One of the problems with being on Linux, please install Microsoft Silverlight. Oh well, it's a good thing I already know Python, otherwise I would have moved on. So I decided to try this trick with APL. I typed in TryAPL online, and I got this. This is an FTP site from who knows where, of a FAQ from '94 about some APL hardware that you can get online with something. Not exactly what I was expecting.
Okay, so if anybody sees Morton at a presentation and his laptop is open, I'm gonna sell you out here, boss. Sorry. Chances are he's got Microsoft Messenger working on his laptop at that time, and so Morton was somewhere down near the front of the room at this presentation. I was somewhere up near the back, and no sooner had these words come from Joel's mouth, they were still hanging in the air, and Morton types to me, "We need to build TryAPL." Okay, so I knew what I would be doing in my near future. And so, having not seen any of those sites that Joel had mentioned, I said, well, what does a try language site look like? So I started to go out and investigate some of those sites and also some of my own. And so there's Try Ruby, and Ruby, it looks kind of cool. Let's make this full screen. Try Haskell, Joel showed. And a lot of these sites have got some sort of a session and then some sort of an instruction panel, right? And apparently they think that sessioned input is a nifty and new thing. Of course, we've been doing it since the 60s. So Try Scheme was interesting. There's absolutely, it says, welcome to Try Scheme, enter some scheme code in the text box at the bottom of the page. Not knowing any scheme, I did 2 + 2 syntax error. I did 2 plus 2, and, there's nothing there. Slightly off the screen. Okay, can we fix that? Try scheme. Pull it over. Better? Yes. So I had no idea what to do with scheme. I don't know scheme, and at this point I'm probably not going to learn it because they have a sucky try site. I looked at TryPython. That was pretty nice. I looked at TryF#, and that's like a marketing site. But one of the things that seemed to be common is, again, they have a 2-panel input. So I tried to look for commonalities. There's a low entry barrier. You can load it from any browser. And if you're on Windows, most of them work. They're interactive, they're sessioned, and most have some sort of a help. So from that, I tried to come up with a set of design goals. It needs 2 panels, an instruction panel and a session panel. It needs to be what I'm terming attractively minimalistic. In other words, you don't want to let all this advertising and frou-frou get in the way of trying to actually learn the language. It's got to be easy to use. And for APL, that presents a couple of challenges because we still have the issue of how do they enter APL characters through a browser, and how do they display APL characters. And it has to be purple. I knew that if it was at least purple, I would get Gitta's thumbs up, and we'd have a success. So another feature that Morton wanted to have was the idea of user sessions, so that everybody, multiple users could use TryAPL, and one person's session wouldn't interfere with another one. They also needed to be restartable over some period of time, so we would save your session. If you went away and came back tomorrow, you could pick up from where you left off. And then the third goal that we had was to make it transportable. In other words, you should be able to save your session someplace, tweak it, and share it with others. Well, we accomplished the first 2. The third one is still under debate. Morton thinks it's a good idea, and I'm kicking and screaming not to have to implement it. So what were some of our challenges? Well, again, entering and displaying APL characters. If you don't have an APL keyboard with symbols on it, you'll have no idea what to type to enter an APL character. What about malicious statements? And I have to thank Andy. Andy's somewhere in the room. Hello, Andy. The first thing he types in TryAPL, right paren erase quad IO. And Andy was banned for a week from using TryAPL after that. But, nothing, again, students and other folk, and particularly some APLers, are going to be very creative in what they try and do with the system. And we also have innocent statements. IOTA 1E9. Well, that's probably going to whiz full. And so what do you do about that? It's a perfectly valid and innocent APL statement, but we need some way to capture that and address it. And then cross-browser support. There are 5 browsers that when I develop sites, I try and support, and those would be Google Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Apple Safari, and Opera. And getting something that functions properly under all 5 of those browsers and looks somewhat the same across all of them is, as Andy puts the phrase, you lose the will to live. So let's talk a little bit about the architecture of TryAPL. So this is a user. He types in 2 + 2 3 4 in his browser. That goes to a my server. So TryAPL is implemented using our my server web server architecture. And my server gets that request and sends it off to the my server task. Fires up a master task, which then takes your expression and parcels it out to one of several slave tasks that are running. The slave tasks are running independently so that if whatever the user types crashes APL, it's not going to affect anybody else's session. So that's what I'm calling the executor. That's one of several slave tasks. At that point, the executor saves both the input and the output from the statement into a session log and tells the master that I executed it. The master then picks that up, sends it back through my server to the user's browser. And that, in a nutshell, is how TryAPL works. And this was quite a team effort. It was a lot of fun. Morton gives me far too much credit because the really tricky bits were done by other people that are smarter than I am. So Joel Huff was, of course, our inspiration. The APL tools team that I head up did my server, the CSS, the look and feel, and some of the JavaScript support. Morton did the design of the architecture that I showed you on the last screen and the executor to execute statements. And then one of the things that we wanted to be able to do was to filter out those malicious statements. And so we turned to Dan to write a parser validator. Dan is, if you need something parsed, Dan is Mr. Parser. And so he was able to write a really nifty parser that we basically whitelist what's allowed to be typed into an expression in TryAPL. And so we tried to whitelist as much as we possibly could without exposing ourselves to disaster. So things like execute and quadfx and certain other things are not allowed, but otherwise you can do pretty much anything in TryAPL that you can in regular APL. John Scholes was very enthusiastic, and so he lent us a number of defunds. He's written tutorials, and he'll be writing more, and just lots of ideas. One of them that I'll show you in a second is boxed display. And the other thing that John was handy for is being able to tweak the interpreter when we needed some tweaks. One of the things that we wanted to be able to do is to capture, if a statement didn't return a result, it caused us problems because we capture the result in the slave and send that back through the server back to the browser. Well, if it doesn't return a result, what do you do? And so John wrote a little I-beam that behaves just like execute, but signals an error if it doesn't return a result. In which case we can trap the error and send basically a no response back to the browser. And then Jason was responsible for our floating keyboard, which you'll see in a second, and basically doing all of the setup and systems administration for TryAPL. And then Andy helped do QA, Heckler, and moral support. So the evolution. We started out trying to figure out what TryAPL should look like, and so I thought I'd take you through a few slides of some early designs. The first one was pretty, APL deals with rectangular data, so I guess this is consistent from that approach, but it looks pretty blah and mundane, and it's using some of the jQuery tools that we deliver with my server. So this is an accordion display here where the different panels will expose themselves when you click on them. That evolved into this. So now we've got a tabbed session on the left-hand side and your input session on the right-hand side. And we have the duck, the Dyalog duck as a logo. And you'll notice that we have a button down here which says Show APL Keyboard. So when you press that, that'll pop up the floating keyboard that Jason had developed. So then we moved into this, a little more stylistic, slightly different, more hip logo, kind of. But this is starting to get close to what we want it to look like. And then finally, this is TryAPL today. And you'll notice that we've located the keyboard button up in the corner here. We've got 5 tabs. We've got links to our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube links. So we also wanted to put Google Analytics, we hooked that up to TryAPL so that we could monitor who's using it, how many hits we're getting, where those hits are coming from. And that was kind of interesting. I have Google Analytics up on one of these. Yes. So this is Google Analytics, and it's for the last month. And you can see that we've got hits ranging from, 20-ish down to 3, 6, up to 25, 29 on Friday. And you can get all different kinds of interesting reports out of Google Analytics. So you can get what language people are using, what operating system, what browser they're using, what country. So let's see who's been. So the United States, 80 hits, United Kingdom, 68, Sweden, thank you, Swedes, for 45 hits, Germany, Denmark, Finland, Austria, Canada, Australia, and Japan. So, and then one of the things that I find interesting is browsers. Chrome seems to be about half of the browser hits that we get, followed by Firefox, followed by Internet Explorer. So Google Analytics is a nifty tool. So let's take a look at some of our analytics. So this is from the period of April 1st to May 31st. And you'll notice that, we have, somewhere between a few and 20 hits most days. And then when you see a peak like this, that's probably Morton giving a talk someplace and talking about TryAPL, and then everybody goes out to try it. And then it calms down again. So I'm going to expand this time frame to April 1st to July 31st. Okay, now, this section here is this flat bit down here. Okay, can anybody in the room find out when TryAPL was mentioned on Reddit? Jason got some 4 o'clock in the morning. What the heck is going on with TryAPL messages? And it turned out that we got so many hits from Reddit that while TryAPL, the core server and such, kept running like a champ, we had generated so many session files that we were getting whiz-fulls trying to read the directory. So we have code in there now to deal with the next time that we get hit by Reddit. So, and apparently there's a thing called the Reddit effect. And so we got hit by it. So TryAPL today, what's it look like? Well, it's developed using my server. We developed it under Windows. But we run it on a Linux VM in our office in Bramley. So if you want to come to Andy's session later this week to learn something about the features under Unix, please attend that. But the neat thing was that my server and TryAPL ported without change from Windows to Linux and just ran. So it's a nice technology for developing on either platform and running on either platform. So let's take a look at TryAPL now. Is it still running? Yes, I hope it's still running. So the first thing I want to show is the APL keyboard, which, gosh, it looks like the 2741. Is that the number? I used to use, it was Harris 1080 terminals when I started. So they were sort of a sister product or a competitive product to the 2741. But so you can see the APL key is highlighted. You can turn off APL and get a regular keyboard. You can shift and get shifted, and caps lock works. And if you type in, if you click on something, it copies to the session and just works. So one of the things that we wanted to try and do was to, like Joel said, lower the entry barrier to being able to use APL. So this keyboard allows you to do that. You can also install the Dyalog IME and run your a keyboard natively to enter APL statements. And the other thing that we did is you can click on any statement that's highlighted in purple, and it will copy it to the session window, and you then press enter to execute it. we have a page that talks a little bit about APL, and I want to take this page and jazz it up some, add some not so dry language to it. So if anybody has some ideas, please share them with me. We have a primer, which, if you've used the keyboard, the language bar in Dyalog APL, all of the help entries that display for the different characters are stored in registry entries on your system. So I wrote something to read out all of those registry entries and put them in a form that I could edit. And so I edited them to take out, for instance, references to QuadML. We run with QuadML 1 here, and so any variations in syntax or functionality based on QuadML we removed. But so if you cursor over any of the symbols, it brings up the help, and then you can click on it, and it will copy itself to the session. And the other thing that one of my additions was to the circle function. I added the table of what all the arguments mean, because I always got frustrated. Andy's shaking his head. So, pardon? It is, okay. Sure. Absolutely. So then we have links to some interesting APL resources and a little bit about TryAPL and some of the limitations, things that we don't implement. And then we also have a tutorial system. And you notice that our list of tutorials is a little short. And that's something that I'd like to reach out to the APL community. If you've got some ideas for tutorials we ought to develop, especially some beginning APL tutorials, we have a tutorial editor. So it basically allows you to wrap your tutorial with the appropriate tags to display. But if we take a look at, for instance, the Conway's Game of Life tutorial, again, we wanted low entry barriers. So you can just hit enter and scroll through the tutorial. And for each statement that gets presented, each APL statement that can be executed, it's automatically copied over into the session and executed. So you can see what's going on. We've implemented a session history so that you can scroll up and down through previous commands. And then one of the neat things is we implemented boxed characters, or boxed display. So how far into the tutorial is our first box display? It's coming up. Hang on. Wait for it. Wait for it. There we go. So when an array has depth 1 or depth 2, it'll box the subarrays. And so this is turned on and off using, what is it, box? So bracket box display is on. So if I did oops, how about an end closing that? It'll go ahead and box it. So this helps people learn the structure of APL data, because just looking at it in your session in Dyalog APL, it's not always obvious. So are there any features that I'm missing on here? I think I've covered most of them. So it turns out that, who was I talking to? Some people, can I mention that one of our clients, and they can admit who they are if they care to, actually point new hires that are going to be doing APL at TryAPL before they start actually loading the software. So I was really encouraged to hear that. So I guess you account for some of those hits on Google Analytics, and thank you very much. Yeah. And one of the things is you can display APL characters in your browser without having an APL font installed. Of course, I have one installed because I work with APL, but the character set will render just fine. We use some CSS tricks so that you can get the APL character set on a browser or platform that doesn't have any APL characters installed. So, try APL tomorrow. Well, we want to develop more tutorials. And again, I'd like to reach out to anybody who's interested. If you have an interest in maybe developing a tutorial or two, I'd be happy to give you the tutorial editing software and show you how to run it. But I really want to have that list be longer. And we want to have some new content as well. And any new ideas. If there's a way that anybody can envision out there how to make this better, how to make it more palatable to students. We have some interns and people that have come out of, recently come out of university and so on. If they've got any ideas, please, share them with us, because we've got to grow the next generation of APLers to, let us take a break at some point. So, again, on TryAPL? No. I guess we'll do it next year. No, I don't think there was a conscious. One of the things you'll notice is that we don't mention Dyalog, except on the About page. And so I'm trying to. We don't want this to be a dialogue thing as much as an APL thing, an APL community thing. Well, thank you all for coming tonight.